second. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss. We have an incredible guest today, Bonnie Crawford. And in case you don't know who this Bonnie person is, she is a true life superhero going from mailroom to boardroom. And a little bit about her is that she's the Chief Customer Officer at Texada Software and leads global teams that deliver exceptional customer experiences, blending her deep expertise in technology and growth. She focuses on business strategy, process optimization, problem solving, and she drives results that fuel growth, profitability, and long-term success. She's passionate about developing people and scaling organizations from startup phases to industry leaders, and she loves making a meaningful difference and leading teams towards shared achievements. And Bonnie and I actually met through the Oregon Business Academy. She always was an incredible person to talk to, so I'm like, I got to bring her on my show. So Bonnie, welcome. Tell us, what's the biggest and best business deal you're most proud of?
Oh my gosh. Well, what a great introduction, Andrew. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I had two that come to mind. First is very early in my career. I had the opportunity to work with China Telecom back in the early 2000s, creating what was effectively the first at-home security integrated system when I was with General Electric. A huge opportunity. Put me in my very first international business trip, which of course led to millions of miles after that. And then I would say the second deal that I am most proud of is during a number of years working in the public transit technology industry. We secured a huge program to provide transit services for customers all throughout British Columbia, working with BC Transit while I was the general manager of UMO Mobility. And the system is thriving and people are getting to all of their life appointments and employment and healthcare. And those are two really amazing deals that I'm super proud of.
So people are able to travel in China and BC because of you?
That's right.
I love that. That's so cool. So here you are at the top of the mountain, literally working with some of the world's largest, transportation companies and different utilities and machinery and stuff. And you said, Andrew, I started in the mailroom. So tell us how the heck this happened. How do you go from mailroom to all these huge accolades?
Well, I think you've got to start by being really intentional. So I started my career, right out of college as an executive assistant, literally, making photocopies and getting coffee for people. And now, as an officer for one of the, world's largest heavy equipment software providers, I think being intentional and really listening to your customers, listen to those around you. We have the opportunity in life to learn from everyone and every experience that we have. And, you don't get from answering phones to being in a boardroom without really having an understanding and awareness of the needs of those around you. And I think that's so important. I also think that, in order to continue to map out a career journey, you have to say yes when other people are saying no. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I give to, young students that we work with in Oregon Business Academy or people that I'm mentoring. It's, if something is possibly going to fail and people say no because they don't want to be associated with it if it fails, if the outcome was already likely that failure is the probable outcome and you say yes and you're able to get it to succeed, what an incredible opportunity to learn and to have a turnaround story that you've been able to be a part of. And so I say, be intentional and say yes and lean into those things that other people might lean away from.
What are some of those examples that people say no to, but you should say yes to? What are some examples of that?
One of the best career experiences I've ever had is I had the opportunity to lead a post-acquisition integration in Australia. And, going overseas, picking up your family, moving, for 12 to 18 months and bringing two organizations together is very challenging in the best of circumstances. When you're a world away, an entire day away, when you are overseas and across the date line, it's exceptionally difficult. And I think saying yes to those opportunities that others might say, well, it's too complicated. I have to uproot my family. I'm going to be alone. What kind of support am I going to have? You get to experience a self-reliance, and you get to really realize how important it is to be able to make quick decisions, which, for a lot of leaders, decision making can be a challenge. You don't want to make the wrong decision. And, I think failing fast and being able to own your decisions, whether they're the right ones or the wrong ones, is an incredibly important part of being an exceptional leader.
I love that. So just like, a lot of people are like, oh, like ready, aim, fire, but sometimes you just got to go ready, fire, aim. Is it what it sounds like?
Sometimes you definitely want to have as much information as possible, and surround yourself with, exceptionally smart people. I am very lucky. I've worked on a number of executive teams, and I would say the executive team I work with at Texada is far and away the best I have ever worked with. Truly fantastic leaders, servant leaders, and really passionate about bringing amazing solutions to our customers, which are the dealers and rental companies that are building the world. You see all of their products on every road and bridge and residential and commercial building that's going up around the world, and it's exciting to know that you're helping them to achieve that.
Oh, I love that. So this is such great advice. It's just like taking the time to listen to people, being able to say yes when other people are too afraid to do it, and they want to say no, like being able to go after things. That makes a lot of sense for helping you rapidly accelerate your career. Any other things I should be asking about, what advice you give people if they want to rapidly go through the ranks and get promoted quickly?
So I would say it's not about getting promoted quickly, because if you get too hung up on your title, where you want to be getting hung up on is the experiences that you are gathering. Think about your experiences like, and I know this is going to date me as a Gen Xer, but as a Trivial Pursuit pie. You remember the pie that has all the pieces, geography and arts and entertainment and sports and leisure. And, you want to be gathering experiences that are going to make you a more well-rounded leader, because not every journey that you're going to be on is going to be linear. It's not like a rocket ship to the top. If you look at my career journey, I went sideways, I went backwards. In one instance, a very wise and astute mentor of mine said, Bonnie, you have all of this great experience in product and marketing and services, and yet you've never actually been in sales. And someone someday is going to ask you to lead a sales organization. And in order for you to have credibility doing that, you really should be a salesperson. Even if it's only for a few quarters, carry a quota, carry a bag, know what it's like to have yes, told to you once out of every 1,000, phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that advice, and I went from, an executive role to an individual contributor role where I was doing software sales. And it was so important to get that experience. And sure enough, a couple years later, I had, another executive I worked with who left the business, and our CEO said, Bonnie, I'd like you to take over the sales organization. And it was like, well, I now know how to do that, right? Because I've done sales. And so taking those moments to be intentional about experience and not focusing on the title is, I think, really important for people who are starting to map out their career journey.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense, and I agree. Like learning sales skills is it's such a lifelong skill that it makes quote unquote life
So
bend
important.
to your will a little bit more easier. I should say, because you're used to rejection, you're used to going after things, you're learning a lot of emotional intelligence and just like situational intelligence, and so I love that piece of advice. So thank you for sharing that. And let's talk a little bit about mindset here. So, a lot of people, that they get complacent, they get comfortable, or they don't think they're ever good enough to keep rising through the ranks, essentially. How do you make sure your mindset's always like, no, 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 I got this, I can do this, let's keep going? Tell us about how you created such a strong mindset towards things.
I think that mindset is something that not enough people pay attention to. I have always been a person that loves a challenge. I sort of embody that, like, well, why shouldn't I go and, live in Australia and do these things, or, go, climb a literal or figurative mountain. And so I think believing in yourself. I know that not everyone has this opportunity, but I'm super thankful that I had very supportive parents growing up, who really, taught me from a young age that I could do anything and be anything that I wanted to and set my mind to. And I also think that, for people who are coming up through the ranks, there's a lot of people out there, right, in the podcast community and in the self-help community that are like, oh, imposter syndrome is fake, right? That's not a real thing. I am here to tell you that I actually believe that it is a very real thing. And even in those moments where you have a strong mindset and you believe in yourself, you still can, get nervous, get, like a little worried about it. How am I going to show up? Am I going to be able to smash, this next presentation? And it sounds super trite and silly, but I have seen it work. I have done it myself. If you have a moment where you are, getting ready for something important, do something that like calms you or pumps you up. Um, I lately have been using, and this is, like I said, it's very silly, but it works. So Snoop Dogg, say what you will about him, but he came out with this affirmation song, and it's like, today is going to be an amazing day. And it's this little sing-songy, rap song that he did for kids. But it's so fun and joyful that, if I'm going off to a meeting or if I'm getting ready for a big presentation, sometimes I'll just put that on my headphones, and it just kind of reminds me that whatever happens, today is going to be awesome. I'm going to do my best to make it a great day, and then tomorrow is another day. And so I think having that positive outlook and really trying to choose joy in your endeavors is an important part of having that good mindset.
I love that. Just being able to embrace the moment and put on some good, feel good music to like really get you in the right mindset and just like manifest a great day and just understand that nothing can stop you once you're in the zone. Like once you got that energy
Right.
going. So
That's right.
I love that.
Exactly.
And sometimes we do just need a nice song to cheer us up from time to time. So that's good to hear how effective that is. Um, and then next question I had was, so a lot of people, they want to scale their companies, they want to scale their businesses, their startups. What advice would you give to people who want to scale quickly?
Yeah. So, I think this is where, and I will say, I, have our CEO, Matt Harris, is someone I've worked with in my past life. And one of the best pieces of advice that I've certainly gotten and that I've seen really play out in scale is, we have this adage that people will subscribe to, right? Many hands make light work. You've heard it, before. And people, I think, feel that they can throw people at a challenge and use people to scale. And I think that that is backwards, and that's something that, certainly, in my time at Texada and working with Matt, we operate in a very system oriented mindset. And so thinking about the systems that are repeatable, and we, think of it as like, strategy, people, execution is kind of our system that we're putting into place here. And when you think about like making sure that you have repeatable systems, that way, when that you need a person, you could certainly bring a person in, but people are not the end all be all to scale. You need to have repeatable processes. You need to be able to think differently about how you will double capacity without doubling headcount, for example. And, this is where, although it is not the solution to everything, I think AI has certainly become very additive for how you can be more efficient in the way that you're engaging. I urge caution, right? It is not the end all be all, but it's certainly helpful in creating efficiency. But you've got to have those repeatable processes in place in order to be able to quickly scale your organization.
Yeah, so that's a good question about documenting systems and processes like and using AI. So tell us more about that. Like, what's the best way to go about creating those systems and processes and using AI? Tell us about that.
So, what I would always recommend, and this goes way back to my Six Sigma GE days, is, take a wall in your office, in your home office, take a window if you don't have a whiteboard wall, and do the Post-it notes, right? So, you put the Post-it notes out on the wall and you're thinking about your process in terms of every single step. If someone has to print a document, that's a Post-it note. If someone has to email something, that's a Post-it note. And you're thinking through the entire workflow of a process. And then the beauty of AI is that you can take a picture now of your Post-it notes and feed that into AI. It'll create a process map for you. It'll help you to identify where there are duplicates in your processes and help you to streamline it. But it isn't a substitute for being able to sit with a team in what we call a workout session and map out, Fred does this task and then Julie does that task. And actually, then Julie has to go back to Fred. You really need that interactive engagement with the people in order to identify where there are opportunities to streamline.
Oh, that's a brilliant exercise. I love that. So you get your whole team together, you get like a huge wall or whiteboard, and you have everyone make post-it notes of the tasks they do throughout the day, throughout the week, basically.
For a particular process. So you need to box it in the sense that, like, if I'm going to do an order to cash process, right? I want to streamline getting a sale all the way to getting the cash related to that sale.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to bring the key people in. So maybe it's it's your salesperson, it's your contract person, it's a person from your finance team, probably a person from implementation if you're in the software world. And you want to map out every single step that each department has to do in order to go from getting the contract all the way to getting the cash in the bank, right? And as you do that, you're identifying, this is where you get different colors of Post-it notes. So finance might be purple, and the services team might be yellow, and sales might be red. And then every team has their Post-it note color, and you're starting to see where all the different swim lanes are of activities. And that can then help you to identify, like, if we actually, moved this step forward, we would be able to eliminate 3 other steps. And so now you've started to save yourself time.
And how long does this process usually take? I mean, hard to tell if this would take like an entire day or a couple hours or a couple months. Like,
It usually, so, infamously, back in my GE days, I mean, we had a massive workout session at one point, which was 5 days. It was like, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night. And, you have just a massive wall and you're working through like global work streams. There's 30 or 40 people in the room. That is a week-long process. I recommend you typically do this in 1 to 2 days, and you make sure that the people are in the room. You've got to have the right people in the room, because if they're not paying attention and engaged, you're going to end up missing steps, and then you're going to have to repeat the process. But it's a very worthwhile investment. We have tackled at least 10 or 12 processes in the couple years that I've been with Texada, and it's something that really helps us to identify ways that we can streamline processes, that we can help to scale faster, and ultimately it's really about serving our customers, in a more meaningful and impactful way.
no, I love that, and that's so cool that just different company sizes, different projects, different teams, making sure everyone's present in the room. Like, I know Steve Jobs talks about that a lot, that if you are in a room, you're not contributing anything, you shouldn't be in the room. So
That's right. Get
just
out.
making sure everyone's present. So I like that. And yes, and tell us again, like how did you get involved with this current company? You said you got recruited. Did you get on your own accord? Tell us about that journey.
So, networking is absolutely underrated. I tell people all the time, one of the best investments in business that you can make in yourself and your future is to stay, connected with people that you've worked with in the past. I had the opportunity to spend nearly 10 years building and scaling a services organization for what was then Viewpoint Software in the construction space and is now part of Trimble Global. And I had the opportunity to work with, a gentleman who was our SVP of strategy at the time, Matt Harris. And, fast forward 10 years, and Matt has become the CEO of Texada. And I was off in the transit technology world, building and scaling organizations there. And he reached out to me and said, Bonnie, we're getting ready to launch a search for an exceptional customer leader, and we're sitting here in the Air Canada lounge. Another former colleague of mine, who's our chief product officer, and had also been at Viewpoint, and they were discussing, who they might know and who might be a good fit. And my name came up, and they said, well, she's probably busy. She's having fun, in the transit world. But it just worked out. It was fortuitous timing, and it's all the more reason why I think working with people that you know and trust. Keeping those networks very strong, and then making sure that you're always thinking about the people that are coming up, behind you, right? We all had mentors and leaders who've helped us in various ways in our career. And I think, one of my really most passionate, it's part of why I love being a part of Oregon Business Academy, is it's about helping to shape the next generation of leaders. And I had great mentors. I feel it's my responsibility to give that back and pay it forward. And so I'm always thinking about, how can I pull up the next, group of leaders that are coming up behind me and give them opportunities to be in the room, to take on the difficult projects and help shape their career, so that someday, when I'm potentially retired or doing some consulting, in my later years in life, I'll be working for one of them, and the cycle will just continue.
I love that, and you brought up mentors and inspiring people. Tell us more about like which mentors, or how do you go about acquiring your mentors? How do you maintain relationships with them? What do you appreciate about your mentors? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. And, as I was reflecting on this, a few days ago, I'd have to say my first mentor and inspiration was really my grandma. She was a feisty woman who was one of the first women in banking back in the early World War II era. She didn't let the fact that she was the first and only woman to work at a major bank in her community stop her. And that really has inspired me to recognize that, it's okay to be first as long as you're not the last, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important. I also had the benefit, mentors can surface from, either a manager. So my, longest time mentor professionally was my manager back in my GE days. He is the one who ended up bringing me into the Viewpoint opportunity and allowed me to really, build out that services organization, which was so impactful to my career. But I think mentors can be found everywhere around you. And, that might be, someone that you're drawing inspiration from, a friend who's overcoming a challenge. It might be someone who's, just tackled something new and interesting to you that you want to learn from. It might be a cause that you want to participate or contribute in. And it might be something, even as simple as, I've tackled a lot of outside of, work adventures and challenges. And, it could be a movie or a character. I don't know if you've seen Andrew, but back in her heyday, Demi Moore was G.I. Jane, in a great movie with Viggo Mortensen. And every adventure, every challenge that I have tackled outside of, the professional sphere, I always like to rewatch that movie and just think about, that mentality of like her just kicking ass and being out there and doing something for the first time and never giving up. And so, I think that that's an important part of drawing inspiration from everywhere you go.
I love that. I like how you phrase that. Like finding a mentor doesn't have to be a super complicated process. It's essentially just like reaching out to people who inspire you, and it can be in different categories like mentorship in adventures, mentorship in business, mentorship in just overall life advice. And so I love that like you don't have to have like one single mentor for everything. Like it's okay to have multiple mentors for multiple situations. So I love how you phrase that. And shifting gears a little bit, I couldn't go without asking, tell us about some of your adventures that you've done. Apparently you've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm sure you have a few more adventures you want to brag about. Tell us about some of your favorite adventures and how the heck you balance doing these adventures and building these huge businesses and companies and startups.
Well, it goes back to that ethos, right? I love to say yes and sort of have that why not philosophy of let's go for it. So I have had the opportunity. I've actually done the Ironman triathlon multiple times, finished the Ironman twice. And if you don't know what the Ironman is, it is the 2.5 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a full marathon, all in the same 17 hours or less in order to officially finish. And I've raced 3 times and finished twice. Totally transformational experience. And from that triathlon experience, I started traveling. I started traveling a lot for business and really sort of shifted gears into like becoming this really heavy travel oriented person. And a couple of years ago, right before COVID, I had the opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with, as we like to call ourselves, a group of 20 fat ladies. And I will say we were called the Curvy Keely Crew. You can Google us. It was incredible. So, I, again, am not one to ever shy away from something that I've never done before. I love a challenge. I'd never hiked. I didn't own hiking boots. I'd never been to Africa, but it was absolutely on my bucket list. And I had just come back from this, 18 months living overseas, building this integration of these two companies. And I'd gone trekking on a week of PTO that I had taken through Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And I thought, well, I'm here. It's hot. It's 100 degrees out, or 36 Celsius, or whatever the calculation was, and I'm going 5 to 7 miles a day through these beautiful temples. Like Africa, like it's 50 miles. Like how hard can that be, right? Like I mean, it's just walking, and that's kind of what I told myself, and so I applied that same training ethos, which is really just like a large project, right? You're managing all the different outcomes and managing risk and practicing and getting things really fine tuned to perfection, before you actually like hit the mountain or hit the race course. And I will say it was an incredible experience. Just a celebration of what your body can do, especially for people that maybe have, concerns about like, am I too old? Am I too heavy? Do I have, a back problem, a knee problem? Like, really, if you prepare for the journey and you focus on the experience, you can truly do anything that you set your mind to. So, fantastic opportunity to climb Kilimanjaro. They made a documentary about our group. It's called Keely Big. You can Google it. It's available. I think it's on a streaming platform, maybe Chicken Soup for the Soul or something. These days, it's kind of hopped platforms a little bit, but truly an exceptional experience. And how you fit all that in while also building a business,
Yeah.
That is what I call calendar Jenga. Um,
Yeah.
you have to really, really be very intentional with how you plan, doing things like, waking up early, staying up late, making sure that you're having a supportive significant other if you are lucky enough to have a significant other, and then also I think really expressing that to your team, to the leaders that are partnering with you, so that they are also bought into this adventure that you're on. And it's not something you can do every day. I would say I'm not planning an adventure right now. I hope that as we continue to scale our business, and that there will be an opportunity to take on the next adventure. But you can't always be doing an adventure and also be scaling a business at the same time. It kind of comes in fits and starts.
That makes sense. Having the calendar Jenga, just like staying on top of things, staying organized, and that's cool. You got a documentary made about you guys. How'd that come about?
Yeah, so I think if you think back into the like 2018 time frame, 2019, it was really when there was this body positive movement going on. Like, you can do anything in the body that you have, and the idea behind the documentary was, let's this is before all the weight loss drugs and everything sort of started coming out. It was really meant to showcase that you don't have to sit on the sidelines and wait for an opportunity to present itself to you. You can actually go with the right mindset and training and preparation. You can go out and do all kinds of things in the body that you have today. And so we had a great independent filmmaker who created this documentary. It actually won the jury prize at the Gina Davis Film Festival
Wow.
down in Bentonville, and at a couple of other film festivals in 2019 and 2020. So pretty exciting opportunity to be a part of that. I will say only a couple of the girls, and not including myself, because I did not make it all the way to the top. I got altitude sickness before the summit, but still really proud of the experience and a lot of the life lessons that I learned, including that you can prepare for all possible scenarios and still have something unexpected happen, and you just have to make the most of it, and pivot. So it's something that I think for all of us in business we learn every day, right?
Yeah, no, that's so inspiring too. Just because like a lot of people get intimidated just by the thought of climbing a mountain. You're like, well, let's do it. So
Let's go for it. What have
that
you got to lose? It's not that hard.
no, that's pretty cool. That's very badass and super awesome. So we have a few more questions left here. What do you believe are the non-negotiable actions and habits to be successful in life?
Well, as I said, you have to be comfortable saying no, and protecting your energy. I think that, for a lot of people, especially as you're navigating your career, you think that you must be everything to everyone. And so, you think about like, well, in order to get to the next rung on the ladder, to that next opportunity, I have to say yes. And the reality is, and this is something that I think for many of us, we might learn later in life, it is about being strategic in what you are saying yes to, which means you have to be comfortable saying no. It also means that you need to be thoughtful about where you're investing your energy. And, by that, I mean in your social circle, in the volunteer life that you have, a lot of people are going to be prioritizing your family life, and your maybe your church life, maybe you're on a hobby soccer team, or maybe you have a dog that you are very invested in, like the dog adventures. I'm a cat person, in case you didn't know. So I don't
Mhm.
know about the dog adventures, but the cat adventures, I guess. And so you have to really be able to balance that. I also think that you need to remember that at the end of all of our lives, and eventually we are all going to get to the end of our lives, it isn't your career, it isn't your business colleagues that are going to be there at the end, right? It is your family and friends and your community. And so make sure that as you're prioritizing, that you are also being really thoughtful about pouring energy into and keeping that community close. And I think, Andrew, we were talking earlier, I live part-time in Portland, Oregon, part-time in Waco, Texas, part-time in Toronto, where our company is headquartered. So I am a lot of different places. And for me, making sure that I have an active and strong community in each of the places that I call home is so important because it allows me to take moments away from business and fill up those sort of, outside of work pursuits. And so I would really encourage you all as you're thinking about, how to be successful, to remember to put energy into the people that are around you that aren't just your business colleagues.
I love that. It makes a lot of sense. Just like community is so important, and because like it keeps your mental health at bay, it keeps you the support you need, and it's also always impressive too the fact you're able to have these communities literally all around the country and probably all around the world. And so props to you for cultivating that and creating that. It's very inspirational to hear. And we have a few questions left here. Bonnie, you're a world traveler. You're an executive. How did you feel like, hey, I actually feel like I've kind of made it in life per se? The fact you could travel all this time, you have all these communities, you're running a successful company. What was like kind of that moment for you?
It's funny. I don't know that I'll ever really feel like I've made it. I've been really contemplating this question. I think,
Yeah.
when you do something that you love and the work that you're doing, the people that you're, connecting with in your life are bringing you joy. And I think that, for most people, making it is being financially comfortable. And, I think that's something that we're all on a continuum of as we build businesses and, hopefully sell businesses and, continue that. But for me, I think it's really about, doing something that brings me joy and then allows me the opportunity and freedom to do adventures and to have, grand adventures. And then also to, be creating a legacy for my niece and nephews, for, communities that I'm really proud to serve in, like the Oregon Business Academy, that, where you're able to invest in the future that's going to be, here long after you're gone. And so, maybe that's the definition of making it.
No, oh, I love that. No, that's a great answer. Just like leaving your legacy and just doing your best at that. So I love that. All right, so last few questions. People want to know what's the next end game you're working on? Like, what's your next pie in the sky? Or is it the answer you just had of just like living your legacy and doing that? Or is there another answer that you have?
I think that, I'm very focused on scaling and, building our business at Texada. We're continuing to grow in, hyper growth mode. And so that's a big focus. I think, as we continue on that journey, probably the next adventure that I have my eye on is I'd love to walk the Camino in Spain, which is a,
Ooh, yeah.
500 mile kind of, very solitary and contemplative adventure. So that's probably the next big thing that I have my eye on. But, it's also just, doing things that bring you joy and making sure that you're, investing your energy in all the right places.
That's quite the bold goal. The Camino. When I went to Spain in 2019, I want to say, no, 2016. I went to the end destination where people end up at the end of the Camino, and it was really cool to have everyone like always celebrating of new people coming in all the time and ringing church bells. And it was just this gorgeous church you can walk into and view as like a final coup de grace of the experience. So no, I'm looking forward to seeing your posts about that. That's super awesome. That's the next thing you're going for. I love that. And then, yeah, final two questions are, how can people best contact you, get a hold of you, connect with you? What's the best way to go about that?
I think I've always thought maybe I should make a blog or, that's also so very Gen X, right? We used to all have blogs.
Yeah.
I think the best way is just on LinkedIn. I'm Bonnie Crawford. It's very easy. There's a picture of Kilimanjaro behind me. in my background photo. And, that's definitely the best way to contact me. And maybe someday I'll get a TikTok or something. I'm not really on TikTok, so one of these days.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And then the final question is, what's the one takeaway you want people to have from this interview today?
I think the one takeaway that I would want people to have is that anything is possible if you put in the work and you have a winning mindset. Really both are required for maximum awesomeness. And I think that, it's so that the world is your oyster. And if you believe that anything is possible and you bring that mindset, but you put in the work, you really can achieve anything. And I'm excited to hear from the next generation, for all of those people who are going from the proverbial mailroom to boardroom. And if you haven't had a chance to participate in some kind of youth mentoring, I would encourage you to go out and do that as well, because it really does give you a window into what the next generation of leaders is going to look like, and you can have an opportunity to shape them.
And I love that. I love that. And yeah, if you ever want to connect with Bonnie and I in person, yeah, as mentioned, we're part of the Oregon Business Academy. You can go to oregonbusinessacademy.org, I believe, is the website, and volunteer with us in the summer at Oregon with helping various student leaders develop the business skills they need. So, no, yeah, I'm so glad we got connected with that wonderful organization, Bonnie. This has been so fun today. Thank you for sharing your wise wisdom and advice, and showing, like, being able to push past limits, what we thought possible. So this has been a blast. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew, and look forward to seeing you back out on campus next summer.
Here we go. Woo. All right, we'll talk soon. Cheers. Thank you.